saffron is also one of the most, let's say, fraudulent commodities. There is a lot of fraud because of the price per gram or per kilo. There is a lot of fake saffron going around in the market. So that's why also high quality saffron is very valuable at large scales as well.
Welcome to the Future Crop Files podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Douglas. Today I'm joined by Khalil Mirza of Saffro Systems and Viktor Kulcsar of Veles Farming. Khalil and Viktor, welcome.
Hello.
Pleasure to be here.
Before we dive in, if both of you could maybe just briefly introduce yourselves, speak about your current roles and how you came to work in Saffron.
Viktor, you want to start?
Yeah, okay, I can start. So my background is in business. I studied school and we started our company, Veles Farming, our indoor farm in school actually, where we started with growing leafy greens, microgreens for restaurants and bars over there. And we are looking for other crops to get into with basically higher added value. And we are going to wasabi, gentian, functional mushrooms, a lot of these crops like blackberries, blueberries, and other stuff that we are looking into. And we came across saffron. And by coincidence, we found a good, let's say, mentor from Iran, who was also in a way teaching people how to grow saffron. And then we took some of his methods and then we upgraded them and implemented the whole thing into the indoor space. I know it's done around the world in various ways, but this would be the intro on how we get into the space.
Excellent. Very interesting.
Yeah, and then my journey was a little bit more on the academic side, coming from University of Vermont. Had a nice internship with the North America's first saffron research center under Dr. Margaret Skinner, and then they brought in a postdoc, Dr. Arash Galagol-Gabahani, another great Iranian researcher in the saffron field. And I was basically looking for a summer internship. Really had no idea what saffron was at the time, but the opportunity to work in the entomology lab to study insects was kind of what drew me there originally. And then Dr. Skinner was like, hey, by the way, we have this great postdoc, Arash. He's introducing saffron to North America, and we'd love for you to work with him and see what kind of research you can do. So that was my first entry point, was actually through hands-on field research on a variety of aspects related to saffron. And then I, similar to Viktor, in undergrad, went ahead and created Saffro Systems to basically help expand the mission that they were doing at the North American Center for Saffron Research and Development, and really help expand access to resources, educational, as well as a variety of agricultural technology tools for saffron growers to go ahead and adopt and improve their processes or get started.
Very cool. All right. Well, I've been looking forward to chatting with both of you, so I'm going to jump right in. In your opinion, maybe I'll start with you first, Khalil. What's driving grower interest in indoor and protected saffron production right now?
Yeah, I'd say there's a couple points there. One is from, let's say, the traditional standpoint, outdoor production has faced a lot of hurdles, whether we're talking about longer term climate change, patterns, all the way to more short term economic patterns with regards to, inflationary pricing, as well as, obviously a lot of issues with regards to geopolitical situations between, the United States and Iran being the world's largest producer, producing around 80% of the world's saffron. And so a lot of these fluctuations in the market is sort of a macro scale, if you will, macroeconomic scale of kind of, force people to look into other means of production where you're now able to grow saffron indoors year round, regardless of climate, regardless of, the typical, I would say, geopolitical hurdles, because now you're able to grow instead of needing, let's say, capital and subsidies to really get kick-started outdoors. You can start indoors, much smaller scale, get started, and really grow from there at a much more rapid rate, I would argue, than those that need obviously a lot more land going horizontal outdoors as opposed to vertical indoors. But then the more micro, I would say, shifts is, of course, that the advents of AI and all these other excellent technological tools are just creating a really interesting convergence between software and hardware, where we see now indoor producers are able to be so much more sophisticated with their manipulation of various variables. And as Victor can speak to much better than I, you can now, certainly get a lot more forced flowering production indoors and thus get multiple flowering cycles per season relative to outdoor where you only have one.
And Victor, do you have anything to add to that in terms of kind of the motivation, what's driving people to look into saffron production in protected environments?
Yeah, I think the main thing is as well, like I think what Khalil highlighted is the majority. The main, I think the biggest driver is the economic value that you are able to provide on smaller scale, because when you compare the outdoor growing versus the indoor growing, the numbers are a bit better compared to the size. For example, our farm is on out of 50 meters square of area. It's basically compared to like I don't know now. I will speak in kilometers. Sorry, but the kilometer square of outside land, just in 50 meters square that we have in the farm. So we're able to basically squeeze a lot of area into small. And then with saffron is all about numbers. I think, in my opinion, especially you can start small, but you need to grow out, because you need around 150,000 flowers to get 1 kilo of saffron, and that is a lot of work. A lot of labor is now manual, and this is where indoor farming is coming in very hot as well, because you can automate a lot of the processes. Well, not everything yet. A lot is being done behind the scenes, but the automation also just on the growing side is a big help. And the precise numbers, there is new demand from new industries as well. For example, medicinal, where they are looking for high grade saffron, which you can indoors, because you have a hermetically enclosed environment where you can precisely give the flower what it needs when it needs, and it will result in the higher content of bioactive compounds in the product, in a way, I would say then.
And so in terms of demand, you don't only have the demand that has existed for decades, but what you're saying is there's actually increased demand for new uses or new buyers.
Yes, exactly. A lot of areas are opening up. There is a lot of research being done. I think there is a big trend everywhere where we are moving back to the natural substances, not chemical compounds, and saffron can provide a lot of them. Khalil will tell you much more in depth. This is a bit more of his area than what exactly it's and what is the beneficial, but this is the result of indoor farming and the leverage that you can get on outdoor. And let's not forget, saffron is also one of the most, let's say, fraudulent commodities. There is a lot of fraud because of the price per gram or per kilo. There is a lot of fake saffron going around in the market, so that's why also high quality saffron is very valuable at large scales as well.
I was surprised. I read that sometimes they use like corn silk or sometimes even horse hair that's dyed
Yeah.
because the value is so high. It's um anyway, when you speak about indoor production, are we talking about greenhouses or container farms or vertical farms, or what's the most efficient, appropriate way to go about this if you're considering doing it indoors?
So anything that is in an enclosed environment, I would consider an indoor farm. I think a greenhouse, in a categorical way, is in the category of can be an indoor farm. For how we call it is an indoor outdoor farm. So it's the best of both worlds, in a way. Let's call it like that. But anything that is, well, there is a difference between an indoor farm and vertical farm as well, because, for example, Netherlands is a very good example of this. They have huge greenhouses that are controlled environment, but they are working only on one plane. This is where vertical farming kicks in. It's multiple planes. This is where the land stacking basically begin. What I'm coming back to what I mentioned in the beginning, is that we are able to produce as much on 50 meters square that a kilometer and a half of outdoor space. This is where the vertical layering is starting to basically kicking in, and more you have, the basically more yield per meter square you are able to achieve. But then it becomes a bit more difficult on the management side.
It seems like a crop that's very well positioned for vertical farming, given the short height of the crop at maturity. It seems like you could really stack a very small area with a lot of production.
Exactly. Plus, it's one of the, let's say, compared to the traditional leafy greens, microgreens, you don't need to water it all the time. There is cycles that we call it, from dormancy to, let's say, flowering to propagation, where basically for, let's say, 2/3 of the whole process, you don't need to give the plant anything, because it gets everything from the 1/3, and then you just basically manage the environment correctly. And basically you are there. So there is a lot of pluses, but on the other side there is a lot of minuses as well. For example, the labor part. Now it's all manual labor, especially the picking and the peeling of the flowers, and that is a lot of work.
Huh. Okay. Let me ask Khalil, in your experience, what misconceptions do operators make, or maybe early mistakes that you see most often when people are starting to get into this crop indoors?
Yeah, and if I may, Ryan, I'm just going to go ahead and piggyback on one thing Victor said as well on the indoor, farming side, which is we should always also split soilless versus soil-based environments, which of course plays into this greenhouse-based perspective of indoor farming versus your traditional, let's say, aeroponic or aquaponic or hydroponic variation thereof, right? And so saffron can certainly be amenable to both systems. And certainly in a soilless vertical stacked alignment, you're really able to now manipulate a whole lot of variables beyond just the greenhouse scenario, where of course you're still having to worry about the soil quality, the electrical conductivity of the soil, if you're at least very sophisticated and quantitative in your approach to growing saffron. But I just want to kind of piggyback and add that on there,
Of
because I
course.
think it's important. But yeah, it's a great question as well, which is we constantly see this. I've seen this over, my years and years and years in the industry, where growers will basically choose to go with a very large amount of saffron corms. These are the bulbous-like materials that produce the actual plant, and they'll basically say, "Let me just bite off more than I can chew," unknowingly, as Victor said, with all these additional labor costs. And so I think that is probably the biggest mistake that growers will do when they first enter the industry is, let's start with 5,000, 10,000 corms I've seen before. And unfortunately, a lot of these growers, especially whether they're going indoors or outdoors, I of course see a little bit more of the outdoors historically, whereas as we've been discussing, there's a lot more evolution towards indoors as well. But in either scenario, you end up having, in some cases, a lot of loss of crop or productivity or quality, only because the growers don't understand a couple things that are just very typical to the saffron production life cycle. And I'll just highlight one, but there are many here. One is this, typical bell-shaped curve of the saffron flowering season, where you start off in at least in the northern hemisphere, 2 to 3 week period, generally speaking, where saffron is going to flower from October to November. And it's sort of a slow ramp up. You get a few flowers, a couple more flowers, and then you start hitting a peak where in this bell curve, you're at your maximum flower production for your farm. That's also when you need the most amount of laborers. And so whether you're hiring part-timers or some other variation thereof, a lot of growers will underestimate that bell curve function and basically be understaffed for that peak in that bell curve. And then they actually end up, whether they're staying up all night to harvest the saffron flowers and separate them and dry them and store them, or they're unfortunately letting the flowers sit too long in the fields, or in this case in the indoor vertical farms. And you're just going to get slightly degraded quality of saffron because you're not harvesting in an optimal time frame.
Hmm. So one of the biggest misconceptions or mistakes is not anticipating the peak of that bell curve, really anticipating how much labor you need at harvest time.
Yeah, and Veles farming does this so well. So I know Victor can speak to it as far as how they manage that, but it is definitely a very operationally speaking heavy part of the cycle, and you certainly need to plan for it well.
I can relate to that. As an ornamental greenhouse grower in the past, I've grown a lot of bulb crops for spring and Easter season, and it's slow for a long time until it isn't, and all of a sudden. So I can relate to what you're saying. So maybe Victor, a question on cost structure. I know there's a lot of variables, but we were just discussing the different types of way to cultivate saffron in indoor environments. From an operational standpoint, what should a grower understand about kind of cost structure? Would it be similar to an investment in other vertical farm crops like lettuce or microgreens? Or maybe just could you give us a general overview of what someone should expect in terms of cost structure?
Yeah, I will start with what Khalil also opened up already is the work cost or the labor related. This is one of the costs that you need to take into account. As with all the other, let's say, vertical farms or indoor farms, electricity is going to be a big one. These are going to be your biggest costs. And then based on the farm and based on what you are producing, you have the infrastructure and the equipment that you will need. You will for sure need lights, racks, environment control unit. This is the basic, let's say, setup, the minimal viable product. I'll call it now. That if you are setting up a vertical farm, that you can set up for very cheap. These things doesn't have to be expensive. I think a very big like dogma around the space is that the vertical farms have to be very expensive, because I think what was taken wrong is at the beginning everybody mistook it for technological companies. It's not technological for a company. It's a farm. It's a farm that produce, and it's not a tech startup. It's not a Silicon Valley startup. And so a lot of them just put in a lot of technology that was not necessary for the farms to have. And then you add sensors. Then if necessary, you can do everything manually. Then you can layer software on top, which then runs the farm. It can be automated to a certain degree quite easily, but then you have to take into consideration as well the corms or the bulbs, and managing the corms as well. Because, for example, for when you are buying first time or the second time, you will for sure need to buy corms, because you don't have the necessary capacity to put everything in the farm. If you do the propagation correctly, then you can use them the next year. But I would say the corms are also in a way good for 5, 6, up to 8 years in some cases, but that's stretching it too much. So you need to produce new corms. If you are not able to do this sufficiently, you will have a big hole that you will need to plot every year, because you will need to buy corms. And then everything that goes just into the equipment and everything around running, it's basically just running a general business, that you will have all the other costs of that are counted on top. And then of course either marketing as well. When we started, I can give a good example. We just started with messaging people, going to chefs. We started with restaurants, and then with scale we moved into the medical business, because their large quantities are necessary. So also understanding, in a way, I know this is a bit more outside of the cost, but understanding where are you going to sell in the beginning, because in the beginning we are not going to produce too big of a number of saffron. It's going to start in grams, not even 100 grams. It's going to start in grams, and you will need to find ways to sell, and then ramp up and scale up the production. So start small, so you keep your costs small as well. I think generally around 25 meters square of growing area, you can start a successful saffron farm, which is not a lot of space if you take into consideration, and then just add on top everything. Because, for example, also when we take into to the account the lights, you can start with simple white lights, but then you can move later on into the full spectrum. There is a benefit to having full spectrum, because you are able to influence something to some parts, but you are able to again squeeze out the higher bioactive compounds. But everything can be done with also the white light to very good degree as well. So then just this is what we suggest in our book and the course that we have as well, to start small, to have a trial, because also with the labor. For example, our farm that we run, it's around 4 tons per production cycle, and we need around 4 tons of corms, not saffron.
Wow.
Corms, out of that we harvest around 5 kilos, and we need around 50 people per day on the farm just to harvest everything in time. So managing this is the key.
So maybe for our last question today, maybe we'll start with you, Viktor, because you mentioned the importance of lining up a buyer before you even start to spend money extensively on growing this crop. Can we speak in general terms, in your experience or what you've seen with other growers, cost of production versus what they're selling saffron for, whether it's per kilo, per pound? Just kind of give listeners an idea of potentially what is the What is the value behind growing this crop financially?
Yeah. So as we mentioned already, saffron is one of the most viable crops per pound, let's say per kilo, per weight, where the price is the biggest factor. Based on the quality, it can move up and down. We have a certification where basically if you have the highest grade, we call it grade A. This is where most of the money is. When you, for example, grow grade B or C, the money is significantly already reduced. So you are always focusing on getting the grade A. How you achieve it is very, I don't want to call it easy, but there is tons of ways. We have friends in Japan who grow in rice fields. We know people in Paris who grow in pots on rooftops. We know people who grow on seasides. We know of people who grow in various spots, in pots with soil, without soil, aeroponics, hydroponics, just wood. So there is tons of growers doing bunch of sticks. So the costs are going to variety, or it's going to vary for each of them. But just generally, when it comes to the price and selling, what I advise everybody is to get out of the general commodity market, especially in the beginning, because there where the price is going to be the lowest. What you are looking for, especially when you are small, is the businesses that value your production cycle, that you are a farm that produces clean product, which you can upmark as well to a certain degree. And then basically by the quality in the medical sector, it's already then just on paper. You can show everybody, hey, I have this quality, I can charge this price. So that's why you are always aiming with the grade A. And then generally around the world, it moves. When you are on the commodity price level, it fluctuates between 1,200 euros to 2,000 euros per kilo, based on if it's in season, out of season, or generally what is the world situation. But you are always aiming, I think, up on this. So I think the general price that you can achieve is from 20 euros to up to, what I mentioned, the farming in Japan that grows in rice fields, they are selling a gram for 100. So it's just based on finding the right buyer for the solution, because they have they have very nice story. It's a tradition there from the Portuguese all the way. The guy, we know with Khalil, the guy who runs the farm, is a very lovely person as well. So there is a lot of ways. I think generally here is just to finding the right target audience where you can find the target price that you are looking for, and people are willing to pay extra. For example, a good thing for us here in Slovakia, we have a restaurant that is only buying from a radius of 200 kilometers from the restaurant. They don't buy anything else that is produced, and they were willing to pay double the amount of money per gram just to source our saffron, because they could never have a saffron dish without us here. So it just, I think, finding the good customer for this, and then finding the sufficient price. I think everybody has to do a bit of price discovery and just see and ask people around. And I think with time and going through some repetitions on this, you will be able to find the correct price for your business as well.
Excellent. That's very insightful. Before we wrap up, Khalil, do you have anything to add on cost of production versus selling price in your experience?
Yeah, I'll just speak to a lot more on the US side. I mean, we have growers selling from Vermont to California and everywhere else in between, and we see people pricing anywhere from $30 a gram all the way up to $100+ a gram, as Victor said, even with our friends in Japan. So no doubt there's a lot of opportunities for growers to be creative in how they go ahead and price their products. And I would just add one other thing in short, which is we're seeing so much more literature, especially on the medicinal side of the equation, whereby a lot of the value added products beyond just using the saffron stigma filaments, right? These crimson red threads, we're now seeing a lot of opportunities for the purple petals, for the yellow stamen, and there are a lot of as well phytochemical constituents in these different plant parts that are of interest to different industries, especially the medicinal industries. And so certainly we see growers that are able to take advantage of all these different plant parts are going to be among the most successful, because of course their ROI is just going to be that much greater. And usually you don't have to produce anything extra on the growing side. You just need to innovate and take advantage of a lot of the other plant parts that usually are unfortunately thrown away.
Fascinating stuff. And up to $100 a gram is pretty impressive.
But it's a lot of work to get to the 1 gram.
Yeah, 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 I believe it. But if people are interested in researching or pursuing saffron as a crop, you guys are obviously experts at the forefront of growing saffron. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can certainly reach us through whether our social media accounts via Veles Farming or through Saffro Systems across Instagram, LinkedIn, etc. Or if people would like, they can go to saffrosystems.com. That's saffron without an N and systems, all one word. So Saffro systems.com. And just for Ryan and you guys here at this podcast, we created a special discount code for the Saffron Mastery course and book. That's FCF, all capital letters 10. And you can certainly go ahead and take advantage of that if you'd like.
Excellent. I appreciate that. I'll go ahead and drop the information and your contact information in the show notes as well once we publish the podcast.
Excellent. Much obliged.
All right, guys, Viktor and Khalil, I appreciate your time. This has been a fascinating conversation. I could talk to you all day.
Likewise, Ryan.
All right, thanks, guys.
Take care.